Hello everybody and welcome to the top 18 strategy games according to Steam in 2019. Each year Steam posts their top 100 grossing games list, allowing us to see what games generated the most revenue of the year. However, the list is not numbered, but instead broken into 4 categories, and they're randomly shuffled each time you load the page. So in order to make a good guess of how these games actually rank, we can use Steam charts to track the players for a particular game. The idea being, the more players, the more money the game probably made. It's not always the case though, but it is the best metric we have. So with 18 games in the list, I'll be doing quick summaries on the games to catch you up on any you may have missed, rather than deep dives on each one. Let's begin. We'll start off with the bronze category and then work our way up. The bronze category listed 60 games in total. In our list of top strategy games, we're starting at number 18 here, and our very first entry is Total War Warhammer. Now this one's actually kind of a complicated entry into the list. While the players did peak at just over 4,200 in 2019, many purchases of this game and its DLC actually feed into its sequel, Total War Warhammer 2. So when you own both games, Warhammer 2 unlocks its mega campaign Mortal Empires, and no doubt that's where the bulk of the players are currently playing. We'll cover Warhammer 2 a little bit later in this list, but for those unfamiliar, Total War Warhammer allows you to take control of one of 5 races: the Empire, Dwarves, Vampire Counts, Greenskins, and Bretonnia, as well as several other optional races with DLC, and battle it out for conquest of the old world. While a decent game in its own right, updates did stop for this game when its sequel released a couple of years ago, and since the games do work together, it's just simply best to play Warhammer 2 if you want the ultimate Warhammer experience. At number 17, we have Planet Coaster. Released back in 2016, Planet Coaster is widely regarded as one of the best park simulator games ever. The game features incredible creation tools that let you customize your park down to the smallest detail, and it has continuously received extra themed DLC content to keep the game fresh. Community creations on the Steam Workshop allow you to import assets and share rides, buildings, or entire parks with others, promoting a sort of a play, create, share economy. One drawback of the experience is that the park management aspects can feel a little bit lightweight, taking more of a backseat to the actual creation and design aspects of your park. At number 16, we have FROSTPUNK, released in 2018. FROSTPUNK is all about strategic city planning in extreme conditions, managing people through difficult moral choices. As the temperature plummets due to some unknown global catastrophe, you must research steampunk technology that allows you to gather resources, feed the hungry, and keep your colony warm. Originally released with one main story campaign, the game has since expanded to feature a second story campaign and an endless sandbox mode for free. It's also received a new season pass, which will be adding their largest expansion yet in January of 2020, The Last Autumn, a prequel to the Frostpunk story. At number 15, we have Jurassic World Evolution. Released in 2018 to mediocre reviews, Jurassic World suffered from a linear campaign with restrictive creativity. However, now the game has since released 9 milestone updates that added new content, including a sandbox mode, challenge mode, new dinosaurs, group behavior and sleep behavior, as well as new contracts, day and night cycles, new cosmetics to dress your park, and a bunch of quality of life features. This has of course also dropped alongside several DLC packs, including the most recent and much requested Return to Jurassic Park pack, which brings you back to the original island from the 1993 classic film. It can sometimes feel like more of a viewing gallery for impressive dinosaur models rather than a true to the movie's experience of what running an actual dinosaur park would be like and what could happen should things go wrong. The escape gameplay is still amongst the weakest aspects of the game, but this is still the best park management game with dinosaurs. Moving on up over 10,000 peak players in the bronze category, we have XCON 2 at number 14. Released in 2016, this game doesn't need much of an introduction or explanation at this point, and unlike most other games in this list, it hasn't received DLC or updates since the War of the Chosen expansion pack in 2018. So with no new content in 2019, it's a testament to the game's quality that it's still so heavily played and has several modding communities frequently creating cosmetics and other overhaul projects to take the gameplay to other famous franchises. For those just not in the know, XCON 2 is a turn-based tactics game with a meta campaign for fighting back the alien occupation of Earth. The War of the Chosen is an expansion that adds more depth to that campaign and a variety of content in the form of classes, factions, and enemies. It is a must-play. At number 13, we have Tropico 6, our first new release for 2019. Tropico 6 builds on the formula of previous games pretty closely. That is to say, it's a city builder where you play an eccentric ruler in times of political turmoil and unrest. You need to make the island of Tropico self-sufficient and play other various superpowers off of one another, while deciding if you're going to be a harsh dictator or a peaceful and benevolent ruler. The main new features of this Tropico was the ability to build bridges between islands and play on multiple areas at the same time. Interesting side note, Tropico 3, 4 and 5 was previously developed by Haimamont Games, and this one is now developed by Limbic Entertainment. Despite what I'd consider to be soft numbers, the game is reviewed quite well and has a steady stream of updates, with its first DLC just releasing several weeks ago, although it was to mixed reviews. At number 12, we have 2 Point Hospital, a spiritual successor to and practically a remake of Theme Hospital. 2 Point Hospital takes a lighthearted spin on running a hospital with wacky diseases inspired by pop culture and puns. You're typically given a fairly blank slate hospital where you build rooms to manage staff and patients, and it's up to you to create unique areas and specializations to cure the more peculiar diseases. The game has also received 4 new DLCs, 3 of which are larger content expansions that add new locations and regions, the Arctic, Tropics, and Desert. Combined, the DLCs come with 102 new illnesses, with 30 of them visually distinct and animated, with new ways to study and cure them. It's a really fun game full of charm and wit, but if you're looking for a little bit more realism, I'd also recommend you check out Project Hospital. Moving up to number 11, we arrive at the first Paradox game of many in our list, Crusader Kings 2. With the recent update of CK2 going free to play and announcement for Crusader Kings 3 on the way, there's never been a better time to sink your teeth into one of the most critically acclaimed strategy games of all time. Though visually quite dated and intimidating, if you let CK2 get its hooks into you, it does not let go. You play as a ruling family member in the Middle Ages, and you must see your dynasty survive secession in a messy sandbox narrative full of religious affiliation, familial jealousy, betrayal, and of course incest. With 15 DLC expansions, many people are turned off knowing where to start, but with frequent sales, the best way to play is just to try this game for free and then choose the expansions that interest you the most. You do not need to buy them all, and they're frequently on sale, so take it piece by piece. Moving now on to number 10, we have another Paradox grand strategy game, but this time moving away from the internal character management and instead focusing on the wider world. It's Europa Universalis 4. The first on our list to breach the 20,000 peak player count in 2019, EU4 is a global conquest game set in and around rich historical events that allow you to play with and change history. This time featuring just 12 expansions with numerous extra content and cosmetics and more on the way, EU4 has not yet gone free to play and doesn't look like it's going to be doing so anytime soon. Unlike CK2, EU4 does have much more of a welcoming UI and tutorial, though it's still recommended that you look to YouTube and online guides to really figure out the possibilities. EU4's player base and player count is one of the most consistent of any of the games on this list, generally maintaining the same numbers every year since its release, another testament to its quality and replayability. Still in the bronze category for gross revenue, number 9 in our list is Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. With just over 25,000 peak players on launch, these numbers need to be caveated with the fact that it was also playable on the Xbox Game Pass for PC during its launch, so no doubt a lot of people, myself included, picked it up there instead. The Definitive Edition for Age of Empires 2 comes with native 4K 60fps assets, a newly remastered soundtrack, a bunch of quality of life improvements for gameplay and ease of access, as well as all DLC and expansions to date bundled into one package, granting a total of 35 unique civilizations spread across 28 campaigns. For owners of the Age of Empires 2 HD Edition on Steam, you can also upgrade to the Definitive Edition at a discounted price. Our third Paradox game in the list, we have their latest game at number 8, Imperator Rome, weighing in at 29,000 players just after its launch day. It's important to note that for some reason, Steam charts did not log the players on launch itself. For some reason, it's missing data for that period, but reports at the time estimated that it was closer to 42,000 according to the Steam Community Hub page. Either way, it doesn't change the position in our list even if it had reached 42,000. Imperator Rome marketed itself to be a sort of fusion between CK2's character-driven focus and EU4's empire building, but set in ancient Rome. However, it stumbled out the gate and fell flat, with players suffering mostly negative reviews and losing 95% of its launch player base within the first month. Since launch, Imperator Rome has overhauled the game with several updates, removing the most frustrating issues with the game such as mana power, and promising to move to a much more realistic approach due to player feedback. However, while its user score has improved now to mostly positive. Its player numbers are still struggling to maintain 2,000 to 3,000, and it's currently the lowest of any Paradox Studios game in the last 7 years. At number 7, we have our last and final entry into the bronze category on Steam, and it's yet another Paradox Grand Strategy game, and this time it's Hearts of Iron 4. Released in 2016, Hearts of Iron 4 reached its all-time peak of 46,000 players and frequently averages around 27,000 daily. Hearts of Iron 4 takes grand strategy and condenses it down to a much shorter timeline in the events leading up and involving World War II. While CK2 is characters and EU4 is empire building, Hearts of Iron could possibly be described as logistics and supply on a global scale. By utilizing your economic power, trade and alliances, you can play as any country and rewrite history. In terms of onboarding, Hearts of Iron is also one of the most friendly Paradox games to learn, but it still has a lot of intricacies and nuances that aren't explained very well, but part of the fun is figuring these things out. In terms of DLC, Hearts of Iron 4 has 4 expansions to date, with a 5th currently announced and on the way sometime in 2020. Moving on now to the silver category on Steam. This category represents the top earners between positions 25 and 40 of the total 100. Number 6 in our list is Cities Skylines. So this one's an interesting one to note because its peak players is actually less than Hearts of Iron 4 and Imperator Rome. And Imperator is a brand new full-priced game, yet Cities Skylines, a game from 2015, generated more gross revenue in 2019. City Skylines is, I think, the best city building game perhaps ever, or at least certainly in the last 10 years. Skylines is all about growing your city to accommodate the most people that you can and move them around effectively. It has a very intuitive and easy to follow tutorial and progression model with more buildings and services unlocking as you grow your city. The game runs extremely well, it looks beautiful, it has a large degree of control to how you design your city, it has an enormous modding community, and it's still receiving content and updates from the developers. There's a bunch of cosmetic DLCs and 7 expansion packs. 2 of them, in my opinion, would be essential, which would be mass transit and natural disasters. With those 2, your city building experience is a truly complete package. Number 5 in our list is Stellaris. Stellaris is grand strategy on a galactic scale, but unlike other Paradox games, Stellaris has the largest amount of attention to the user experience with a very friendly tutorial and art-rich UI. In Stellaris, you can create almost any type of species you wish, determine how it governs itself, and then randomize a galaxy to create an endless sandbox of possibilities. If you wanted, you can even design every empire you encounter, from despotic slaver empires to peaceful tree people. Then it's up to you to contend with the others or prepare yourself for intergalactic invasions, build megastructures, breed species, create artificial intelligence, and uncover lost relics of the galaxy. In the last 2 years, Stellaris has received multiple major overhauls, completely redesigning how you build and specialize planets, and how war is waged between empires. Recently, a new expansion was announced focusing on diplomacy, set to release sometime in early 2020. Number 4 in our list is a brand new 2019 game, and that is Planet Zoo. Made by Frontier Developments, the developers of Planet Coaster and Jurassic World, Planet Zoo almost combines the 2 games in a way. You have full detailed control of designing your zoo down to every little detail like in Planet Coaster, but you also have the habitat management from Jurassic World, where you need to make your animals feel happy and keep them fed and breed them to continue their populations. You can also now set up breeder programs where you sell animals on a real marketplace, interacting with other players in the franchise mode. Again, the management aspects of these games sort of takes a backseat to the actual creation and design, but there's an enormous amount of control when it comes to building your zoo, and there's continued workshop support for people who want to share their creations and import them into their own zoo. Moving into the gold tier of games, this category represents the top earners between positions 13 and 24 of the total 100. The only strategy game in this category was Total War Warhammer 2. Released in 2017, it reached a peak of just shy of 45,000 players. As mentioned early on, the game combines with its predecessor to unlock the Mortal Empires campaign, the biggest in the franchise's history. It grants access to a combined total of 15 races to encounter or play as. On its own, Warhammer 2 is quite a good game, but when combined with the previous game, it far exceeds both in terms of quality and replayability. Only a few weeks ago, a recent update also extended the size of the map and improved its performance radically, breathing new life into the game alongside its latest DLC drop. The modding community are also hard at work on adding new battle maps to the game, as well as major overhaul mods that focus on making the game more true to the lore of Warhammer Fantasy. Moving now into the Platinum category, this is the category for the 12 highest grossing games on Steam. Of these 12, 2 were strategy games. Number 2 on our list is Civilization 6. Civ 6 peaked in 2019 with 93,000 players during a free weekend in February alongside the release of its Gathering Storm expansion, but typically the player count concurrently is about 37,000 players, which is only marginally ahead of its predecessor, Civ 5. Civ 6 builds on the familiar Civ 5 hex-based gameplay, but focuses a little bit more on the ways to improve cities and build taller within the map. With the latest expansion Gathering Storm, the game has truly started to separate itself from its predecessor, with distinctly unique gameplay such as Power and the World Congress. Number 1 in our list for the most concurrently played game and presumably the highest grossing strategy game on Steam is a brand new release for 2019, and that is Total War 3 Kingdoms, with a staggering player count of 191,816 players on launch. 3 Kingdoms smashed the all-time highest played record for a strategy game, which was previously held by Civilization 6's launch at 162,000. Using the romance of the 3 Kingdoms novel as inspiration, Total War 3 Kingdoms was a sort of hybrid historical and light fantasy Total War, where famous heroes of the period would battle it out for dominance of mainland China. While critically received very well by players and critics alike, the game slowly lost most of its player base over time and has not received many updates. It added a Blood cosmetic DLC followed by a separate Timeline DLC, both of which were received pretty negatively, and has resulted in the slow bleed of its players, now sitting at between 10 and 15,000 peak. A new DLC named Mandate of Heaven is on the horizon, but time will tell if that can get players to return. And that's it for the top 18 strategy games on Steam for 2019, but before I go, there are almost some trivia style things I wanted to bring up about this list, so let's go through them. So the first thing is that in 2018, there were 21 strategy games on the list, but for 2019, there's only 18. Here's some of the games that have fallen off since last year. Total War Rome 2 and Total War Thrones of Britannia, Football Manager 2019, Battletech, Factorio, Civilization 5, Age of Empires HD, Surviving Mars, and They Are Billions have all slipped out of the list from last year. Here's some strategy games that released in 2019 but didn't make it into the top 100 earners at all. There's quite a few I'm not mentioning, but these are the ones that kind of surprised me the most and I feel deserve a shout out. Steel Division 2, Age of Wonders Planetfall, Field of Glory Empires, Age of Empires 1 Definitive Edition, and Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark. It's worth mentioning the Xbox Game Pass also has all Paradox games on it now, so this may have affected Age of Wonders Planetfall, though it did launch on Steam before being on the Xbox Game Pass. It's also worth mentioning that Anno 1800 was on Steam for a short period before being pulled off the storefront for anyone who hadn't already bought it. The game is now on Uplay and Epic exclusively, and will be on Steam again in future, but no doubt this game would have made the list somewhere had it remained. And lastly, speaking of Epic, Phoenix Point, the XCOM type game released by one of the original creators of the original XCOM, released on Epic Games Store exclusively, so it isn't listed on Steam either, and we've no indication of how that's done commercially. Of our list, 6 of the games were published by Paradox, 4 were published by Sega, and 3 were published by Frontier Developments. And that is it for the video. For those who don't know, I have a curator page on Steam. I've left a link in the description to that page so you can see those top 18 games listed there and their current discounts if they're ever on sale, as well as my other lists and recommendations. I'm not affiliated with, nor do I get anything from that link, but I just thought it'd be nice to post a list there. Thank you very much for watching. If you do want to catch more strategy games throughout 2020, make sure you subscribe here, maybe support on Patreon, and tell me what you're most looking forward to. And I'll see you in the next one.